What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fresh Podcast, where we bring everything fresh and entertainment. I am your host, Drew Brumfield, and joining with me today is Seth. Seth, how you doing?
Doing good. Glad to be back on.
Great. It's great to have you. And it's just Seth. Unfortunately, Randy and Robert could not join us through scheduling issues. But we are here. We are talking about the big one. This is the best games of 2024, along with like a bunch of other things we've been playing and things that we'll be playing in the future. Before we get started, Seth, how are you doing? How has 2024 been treating you, just like in general with games and just the experience this year?
I think kind of going into it, we kind of mentioned this with the podcast last year that some of the stuff I was excited for were a bunch of games that I didn't expect to get sequels, like Dragon Age, Dragon's Dogma, and like Stalker 2. These are kind of like, well, I wouldn't say niche titles. These were games that had gone without sequels for just about a decade for most of them. So it was kind of surprising we came into this year. And, they happened, and I had a blast with it, honestly. One thing I want to note is that this year we kind of I would say a good sign for this year is we were talking about this before the podcast, that like one of the categories we wanted to do away this year was most disappointing. And I think the biggest one of the reasons is, one, we were kind of struggling to come up with like games to be disappointed with this year, which is I guess that's a good sign, right? That's a pretty good sign.
Yeah.
I also feel like that maybe we're trying to go for a bend of something just a little bit more fun, a little bit more positive. So
yeah. I will say there were disappointments this year. Like, we could have done the category if we wanted to.
I was at a friend's house and they were showing me this, like, I didn't even know this game came out, but this like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like Viacom published game. It's like an official game. Did you know about this game? Avatar?
Did I block this? I feel like this sounds familiar.
There was like apparently this year there was
I do know about, I do know about this.
It's like the Quest for Air. I'm definitely getting the name wrong.
Yeah.
It's like the Quest for Air, and they're like, look at this. It's fucking awful. And I watched it, and they showed this like, I don't know if it's supposed to be in line with the show, but there's like a boss fight where you fight against Zuko and Azula at the same time, and it does not look good.
Yeah, it's the Quest for Balance is what it's called.
That's right. That's what it is. The Quest for Balance. That was rough.
The reason I forgot that it was this year was because the game looks like a PS2 game. So when you look at it, you think that it came out like way back in the day. But then I'm like, no, this is a 2024 game. I totally forgot about that.
And I had to ask to make sure, like, this isn't like that awesome fan-made open world game that they're working on. It's like, no, this is different. This is not that game.
Yeah.
Which kind of is sad that like a fan game looks way better than this officially licensed thing. I really have no idea what they're doing with the Avatar IP right now.
It's something. We'll see what's happening. But yeah, there was that. There was I never actually ended up playing it. Maybe I will in the future. But Star Wars Outlaws, a couple of people had mixed reviews about it. It's getting better, but just kind of anything. But again, what can you really say?
And then also one of the games I liked, Dragon's Dogma 2 and Stalker 2. Both I really enjoyed those games, but also I acknowledge that like when those released, both of them kind of got panned for performance issues, for bugs and stuff like that too. So I wouldn't say 2024 was perfect by any means. It wasn't. It was definitely far from perfect, but I would still say it was a fun year. One thing I will say, and I kind of noted this in my notes, is I think what kind of made 2024 so good is that this year didn't kind of have those huge blockbuster picks that usually kind of dominate the scene. So you didn't have like an Elden Ring, you didn't have a God of War, and you didn't have like a
Spider-Man
what
2,
one last?
even though that it
Yeah,
didn't win.
like a Spider-Man. Yeah, like
Oh, the
like
Elden
these
Ring won
big.
last year. Is what you already said. What
Yeah,
won last year?
yeah. No, Elden Ring won 2022. Last year was something else, actually.
My years are backwards.
Yeah.
Um,
But either way, you get what I mean. I mean, like the closest thing I could think of that was kind of like that, where a big, high quality product that kind of grabbed
Baldur's
everyone's
Gate 3.
attention.
Baldur's Gate 3, obviously.
Yeah, Baldur's Gate. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate 3 in
Randy would be
2023.
ashamed of us if he was in
Yeah, he was such a big champion for it. Still is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure if we had him on this podcast, it would still be his game of the year.
There were multiple times he asked when he thought he was going to be on this podcast of, can my game of the year be Baldur's Gate 3 with mods now? And I said, I kept saying, like, no, do something else, because it was the only game you talk about. Great game.
Maybe
Fun
depending
game.
on
I'm
the
very
mod.
excited for crossplay, but it's something. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, but that kind of adds to my point where there wasn't that big one obvious game that kind of took over the conversation. I think the closest was the Elden Ring DLC, Shadows of the Erdtree, and even then, that's just the DLC. That's an expansion.
Yeah.
I played it, I loved it, but like not a game. So what I kind of liked this year was the games that did dominate the conversation were just so weird and kind of like out of left field. I think these were all surprises. Like PlayStation, Helldivers 2, and Astrobot.
Yeah.
Neither of those games I expected to be kind of like super praised or get a lot of attention. Helldivers literally was a game released like 10 years ago on the fucking Vita that was like a top-down shooter. So to see that its sequel comes out and be the game that it is, and like, I don't know, I didn't even play the game, and I had a lot of fun with it just because of all the like memes on TikTok and the like
other people's videos.
The conversation around that. That made that game so fun. And I didn't even touch it or play it once. It was just the internet collectively just made it all kinds of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
And Astrobot also, that's another great example. I feel like, and then like on Xbox's side, maybe not as much as those two, but like Indiana Jones kind of came out of nowhere and surprised people.
Yeah. No, well, that's definitely a game we'll be talking about later. Not for game of the year, but yeah, definitely we'll go more in depth about that game later on.
Yeah, super neat. But overall, good year. I think I think what makes this year so fun and what I like about it is, sorry, long-winded point, because this was not a
That's
year
your middle name, so.
where, because this is not a year where we had those big obvious picks. I think it forced a lot of us to kind of pick like, what is this one game that really speaks to us, like on whether it's on a deep and personal level or like it fills in like a very specific niche that we really, really like. Like, I feel like if we did have Robert and if we did have Randy, the highest rated games that we would talk about would not be identical to each other whatsoever, which is exciting to me.
Oh, no, definitely, yeah. I don't think this is definitely a year where none of us would have repeats. All of us had like our game that was almost like tailor-made for us. There wasn't like a big thing that was like, well, obviously one of us has to pick this one. Like a couple of years ago, it was like one of us has to pick Spider-Man 2. Like we're gonna play, like we all like that game. One of us has to pick Baldur's Gate. It's gonna be Randy. That's fine. Like this is the game where it's like, no, yeah, everyone gets to do their own thing. So yeah, without further ado. You want to talk about the big one? You want to talk about the game of the year for me and you?
Yeah, let's do it. I think we need to jump right into it.
Yeah. I'm going to kick us off here for a game that I have been looking forward to for, gosh, I think it was in development. It was first shown like 5 years ago. And so many people, me included, didn't think it was real at all. Technically, I think an indie developer. Probably not anymore. But this is their first like big type game, and it knocked it out of the park. And this is obviously I'm talking about Wukong. Black Myth Wukong is just like we always we make the joke of just like, oh, this game was made for me. I legit think it was, because like I love mythology, especially like Chinese and like Norse mythology. And I love Wukong as a character in almost every form of media he's in, whether it's, you know, Goku or whether it's or he's my main in Smite. Like I think that character is great and just like a staple of like fiction and where that comes from. And also my other thing I love is action games. I've been getting more into like the Souls-like, but this game kind of leaned more into like the Devil May Cry like fancy footwork and like diving around, and it just was one of those things where, like, if I had unlimited budget and the actual physical ability to make a game, I would attempt to do something like this. It's open. It doesn't feel like it's open in the way where, yes, it's a linear story, but you don't feel on rails. So it's still a focused narrative forward, but there's things to explore on the beaten path. It's not a huge, wide open world. It's little sandboxes that are each area, which is the kind of game I like. I just had so much fun with Wukong, and just like the spectacle of it from the very first cutscene of it does they really, you have all your powers at the start, and it's just this, you know, giant colossus battle, and you're fighting it off. And it's just cool, man. It makes you feel like godly, especially towards the end, and just like taking out waves. You know, it's got a really fun level up system. Has multiple different armor sets that give different abilities, different builds, and it has like a lot of replayability. So definitely, Wukong is a game that like it was so highly anticipated. And I am very happy to say that, like, yeah, it met expectations. If I did have to be super critical, I will say that the level up system, while not awful, especially like toward the end, you do get everything. There are certain things where I'm like, I feel like the character should have just had that from the beginning. Just like certain moves that, like, yeah, that the character feels very incomplete without this. And also, you do kind of find a way to circumvent it. But Wukong very much needs essentially a stinger type move. Like a back forward attack that rushes him forward. Because he is fast, but like the dive kick doesn't really go very far, and if you miss it, it's open. There were ways around it by being in thrust stance, doing the attack whiff, and then follow-up attack that just, fun fact, didn't really have a range boundary. So speedrunners found a tech where if there is an enemy like all the way on the other like all the way down the road, you just whiff the first attack, backstep, do the side, and Wukong whooshes across the screen. But other than that, me wanting a stinger is really nitpicky and kind of the only like complaint I have for the game. I'm super excited for its DLC. I believe also, I'm 90% sure this did win Best Action Game. Feel free to correct me if that is incorrect, but I'm pretty sure it did. Which just kind of keeps the...
I think it did.
Yeah.
Game Awards, yeah.
Game Awards.
I'm pretty sure that game won.
Yeah, it wasn't nominated for Game of the Year, but I know it didn't win that. But yeah, I mean, definitely go try out Wukong. Its DLC is supposed to come out sometime this year. And I'm actually pretty interested, because this is another example of like... It's one of those games where I was actually surprised of how well I was able to follow the story, even though it isn't very like cohesive. It is more like you have to find the lore yourself. You only get bits and pieces of it, but it's still a very fun game, especially if you're a fan of action games.
Yeah, it's kind of hard not to like follow sort of like that conversation with Black Myth Wukong, because it was one of those games where although I wasn't really active on a lot of social media, it was kind of inescapable of it. Like people would take clips like of some of its boss fights or a cutscene and show it on like Twitter or something, and they would be like, "Look at this shit! It's so fucking rad." And it's like, yeah, it is insane. Like him like bouncing between these like giants and running off of floating islands and fighting like all these enemies on screen, which seem like it's way too much for the game to run, but somehow it's doing it.
Yeah.
It's insane. It kind of reminds me of like when people would show off the insane cutscenes that would happen in like God of War 2018 or something, where it's just like, look at how detailed everything is. And this is coming from, I wouldn't call them an indie studio because I'm pretty sure they had a backing of a big publisher.
Yeah,
of some sort,
I didn't know what to call them. I don't know what to call them.
But I think you are right. I think they are. This is technically I very much could be wrong, but I think this was the debut game for the studio. Now, if I remember correctly, this studio was formed by a lot of people who formerly worked on a bunch of mobile games. But it's a very interesting and very cool game. And you're right, it is kind of like that game where it's like the conceptual thing where it's just like, well, I would make a game like this. Where I would take maybe like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something. Like let's say you just like, I want to make a game about the labors of Hercules. And this is what I would do. And I would make it this really,
he'd be a good one.
Yeah, it'd be like, this would be this huge, big budget thing, and we would do all these like moments from his stories. So it's kind of cool. It's like, how do I put this? I feel like the conversation we're having is we're finally the end result of like this coming to fruition of like, we're gonna take the tale of Wukong and which is the Journey to the West, right?
Yes.
Story. So like it reminds me of that in the same way that people are getting really excited for the possibility that Christopher Nolan might be directing an Odyssey movie, which is like, it's that thing where you just think about it for a second, you're like, holy shit, like a big production like a Nolan film, bringing it to a epic story like the Odyssey, that's gonna be like,
you're just like, yeah, that works. Like, yeah, that fits. That's like a puzzle piece. Like, yeah, that fits perfectly.
And it's cool that like we're seeing this from a studio that still a big backing, but at the same time that is outside of like a PlayStation, that is outside of an Xbox, or one of the big publishers we always talk about, like EA or Ubisoft or Activision. Like it's something that's come out of like somewhere completely different. So, and I think it.
Oh, sorry. I did just want to clarify.
No, go for it.
I wanted just to clarify one thing. Technically, the game is not. It's not the journey to the West. It technically takes place after the journey is over.
Right.
And you're essentially a reincarnation of Wukong. You're not the original one, because if you were the original one, you would essentially be unkillable, and it'd be just one of those things where like a game wouldn't work. Because it's just like, oh, why wouldn't Wukong just make 100 clones of himself and just go fight it yourself? And you're like, yeah, no, he would just do that. So you're just a reincarnation of him. So your clones are still really good, but they're limited. But I think that's fun. I think that's a good way to like still be like in the lore and in the mythos of the story, without like kind of breaking your immersion or breaking like, the things. It's like, well, why is this character not as strong as he is, like in the story?
I think whenever I've always played a game like that, where like you play as like a character, it's like, why they're this powerful, why not? Like it's like, I can't think. Like it's like when you play like Injustice and you pick Superman. Like Superman should mop the floor with most of these guys, but what I like to think
with like Robin,
But what I like to think of in this instance is like the challenge isn't that you are Superman, is that you basically have to prove, can you be Superman?
Yeah.
Like I like to think of it like that. It's like no, the onus is entirely on the player to match it. It's kind of like acting, where you're like, all right, here's your role. Can you do the script well? And the answer is, I could definitely tell you in my time in Injustice 2, no, I cannot be good as Superman.
No, you can. Anyone can be good with Superman. You just need to learn his You just need to learn his laser move, and then you're. You're
I definitely gotten curb stomped by spamming his laser move. I don't know about you, but definitely happened to me.
God, I hate that character.
So I feel
I hate that
but I
character.
feel like but I feel like that's the cool thing about Wukong, right? Is that like yes, he is like technically in myth. You know more about this than I do, I
Yeah.
should say. But technically in myth, yes, he is invincible. But you are acting out his story. That's the fun of it. Is like you're kind of like an actor. You are acting out his story, and you have to do it to the best of your ability. And sometimes the lines are coming to you, and you're doing absolute dog shit. So. It is an interesting game. I think from both a technical and a artistic perspective. I also think it's a cool game that it seems like it's taken a lot of lessons of other action titles, like a little bit of Dark Souls, a little bit of DMC, but it's taken all those elements. It's like we recognize and we pay respect to those games, but we're also doing our own thing. I saw a lot of people kind of talk about where they were surprised. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe they were just playing too early, didn't go far enough. But it seemed like this game didn't have a parry button, and some people are like,
"Yeah, no, it doesn't."
"Oh, no, there's no parry in it," and they're like, "What the fuck?" It's like, no, but there is a perfect dodge system instead.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like I don't know. I think that's cool. It's like okay, like the devs for whatever reason were like. Probably could have very easily put in a parry system, but they were like, "Nah, man, like we're doing it. We believe he should dodge. That's how he should do it." So I gotta respect that.
Yeah.
That like just because it's kind of the staple now in a lot of action games doesn't mean that they did it. They kind of pick and choose which ones they felt worked best for it.
Yeah, and it's still like the best they have is like they have like essentially a counter. But you don't get the stone stance until like way later in the game. So it is just kind of a thing of just like, no, like our character does this, and that's a strong thing. It is, I think a lot of people also had criticisms because the main issue, I'm kind of doing air quotations, I know you can't see me, but is that people were like, oh, well, it's not quite a Souls game, and it's not quite an action game. And I'm just like, yeah, that's kind of the point, he does it, I think a lot of people either came in as wanting this to be a hard Souls-like, and I was like, it kind of is. Like, yes, it has a light and a medium thing, and you're mainly dodge rolling everything, and it's mainly boss-focused. But, like, that's a lot of video games. Like, that's not just a Souls-like. And it even has things like, yeah, if you die, you don't lose all your stuff, which I feel like is the main staple of like the Soulsborne type video games. And I feel like honestly, once you kind of like let go of a lot of those like stigmas of like, oh, it needs to do like this, or why doesn't it do like this, and just let the game be what it actually is, you get a lot of enjoyment out of that. I think a lot of people, once they, some people couldn't, some people were stuck in their ways, but a lot of people, once they're like, oh, I just let the game be itself and kind of be its own thing, got a lot of enjoyment, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, Black Myth Wukong, definitely my game of the year. Go play it. It's on PlayStation. I think it has come to Xbox at this point. I remember it first released on PlayStation first. But definitely enjoyed it, and I cannot wait for the DLC that comes out later this year.
So I didn't know that they were doing a DLC. Do you have any idea what the DLC is going to be about?
So I'm not the one that came up with this, but there's moments in the story that people smarter than me have picked up on, and it's like, oh, they kind of reference the court and like essentially the heavenly court, and they reference these people a lot and like these guardians, but you don't see them or fight them. It's one of those things like it's referenced by a character and then the character flies away and you just kind of forget about it. So a lot of people are theorizing that it's gonna be that. More than likely, I'm going to assume it also will probably take place after like the game's finale. But again, this is kind of all just like speculation. And the only thing that I know is that they have said that it's supposed to come out this year. We haven't had like a trailer or seen anything about it. I don't know if they're gonna update gameplay, if they're gonna change anything like that. So everything that I could guess would just be kind of just speculation. And that's that. And that's all I got for you. It would just be
fair.
wild
Absolutely
guesses, fair. Yeah. So yeah, that is
cool.
Wukong. All right. Well, Seth, what about you? What was your number one game this year?
It's an odd one. It's one I wasn't quite expecting, largely because it's a remake. And I'm not at all opposed to having remakes on Game of the Year, although it wasn't my Game of the Year. I know it was Robert's. Resident Evil 4 remake blew me away.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 2 remake blew me away.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here again, and I'm here back with another game that is now my Game of the Year, and it's a remake, which is a first for me. And that is Persona 3 Reload. That's also, I feel like it's a good one to talk about just because also Robert, who couldn't be with us, I had talked with him previously, and he had kind of mentioned that Persona 3 Reload was also going to be his Game of the Year. So I feel like I have a lot of responsibility on my shoulders right now,
yeah.
where I have to shoulder this game of I have to both represent not only myself but also Robert now.
Big responsibility on your hand.
Yeah, just a lot. It's a lot to. I have to take a deep breath. Anyways, I think when it comes to Game of the Year, I had to think about, of all the stuff I played this year, what is the thing that has stuck with me the most? What's something that like I am going to remember long after this year is over? And it's the game that I quite simply put I couldn't get out of my head, and that is Persona 3 Reload. Mm-hmm. It's funny because much like last year, Hi-Fi Rush came out very early in the year and cemented itself as my Game of the Year. Persona 3 Reload did the exact same thing. It came out in like February of 2024, and it basically ruined the rest of the year for me because nothing else quite got that good. But you know,
this did it. This was peak.
Yeah. All jokes aside, though, this was great. So for frame of reference, to know about Persona 3, you got to know about the Persona fan base, and whatever you hear about. For me, I got into Persona through Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. I played those games at the recommendation of my friends. Got around to playing them, found that I loved them. They easily cemented themselves as like my favorite games of all time, just because of how well like the art, music, and story and everything works together so well that I was just like, yeah, no, these are my these are like my top 10 games forever. So I finally was like, when they announced that like we are doing a remake of Persona 3 in that vein of like the Persona 5 style a little bit, I was like, hell yeah, sign me up. I'm definitely down for more of this, especially since it was a story I had not experienced. I had never played the original. Now, one thing you do hear about once you do become part of the Persona fan base is everyone hails Persona 3 as the game that kind of cemented Persona's style going forward, I should say. Like basically its gameplay loop, its sense of like music and style all kind of starts here with Persona 3 going forward. And also you hear a lot about people talk about these are the best cast of characters and this is the best story. So it's like, okay, everybody gives all these praises. And I was the person where I was just like, I don't know if it'll hit like that for me, or if it's just, it's that thing where it's just like, what was the first Star Wars movie you watch or whatever? Like because like, it's always like your first is always your favorite. But Persona 3 really gave Persona 5 for me a run for its money. It might honestly, on reflection, might be even better than that game. For one, the art is fantastic. they take I think that taking some of that visual novel anime-esque art style of Persona 5, and that's all like very stylized. They translated that very well into Persona 3, and then they made sure that like it still had its own identity outside of Persona 5. And God, I absolutely love that. It like the art in the world and its atmosphere just like immediately pulls you into it. For one, they also like refined a lot of different mechanics in it. I think the biggest updates was to a lot of its dungeon crawling stuff. It was old, kind of needlessly repetitive, obtuse in a lot of areas where it just wasn't explained well. And here they kind of really smoothed over those like hard edges to make it like a enjoyable experience, while finding small ways to liven up the dungeon crawling experience, like floors where it's like, oh, it's completely dark, or hey, this is like a treasure floor. You do a little mini game where you're chasing down this like treasure shadow and stuff like that. That's fun stuff with the gameplay. That being said, though, if you ask most people who play Persona, they'll probably tell you they do not play the Persona for necessarily the gameplay of it, although it is fun. They play it because of the story, and they play it because of the characters. And I really, really love the characters in the story to this. The best way I could put it is that what makes Persona 5 story hold up so well is the fact that it taps into a very deep and it taps into a very deep and personal and tough question I think everybody has to ask themselves is, what is a life worth living? And the game starts off with a message, memento mori, which, you know, most people I imagine have heard this phrase. It's I believe it's Latin for remember that you die. Remember that you will die. And there are two parts to that phrase, actually. There's memento mori and memento vivere. So it's like memento mori means, actual translation is remember that you must die. But memento vivere is so the second half is so you must live. It is a quote that is all about recognizing your mortality and your limited time on this earth, and how you need to like realize that kind of what gives, at least the way I interpret it, is what gives your life meaning is the fact that it is limited. So you have to like make the most of your time on this earth. And Persona 3's story deals a lot with that. It deals a lot with like death. You meet a lot of characters that you grow really attached to, and then you see awful things happen to them. You see some of them do die, or they have to deal with grief and death in some way. But it's more than just dealing with these awful moments, but it's also about how do you move on past it and still find something worth living for past that. And I think Persona 3 captures that kind of story so well. I like, God, it like, I feel like I feel like I'm having like a really big just like war flashback when I think about this game. Almost like but it really is that deep and like emotional with it. That happens when you spend about 100+ hours. Okay, it took me like 80 hours. That's kind of exaggeration. But like when you spend all these times with these characters and you have these like little hangout moments and you get to know them and you get to know their dreams and stuff, and then you have to go along with the story and just like see how it forces them to change and deal with all this awful stuff out there. It's so well done. I see why the story holds up so well. It must say something that a game that came out originally in, I might get the year wrong, like 2006, comes out in 2024, and its story still holds up remarkably well. I think that's a testament to like the kind of how the timelessness and how well done the story is. I've even looked back at some scenes of this game in the original Persona 3, and largely a lot of the dialogue and lines are unchanged, which is fascinating because they do rewrite some things. But God, it's so good. I think about that. I think about its all the little details too that they get right in terms of like how good the art is and the music. There's such a strong sense of identity, especially with Persona 3, that even separates it away from Persona 5, where it has this nice blend of like sort of poppy J-pop style of music, and not just pop style music. I'm talking like it's a very specific era. It is like that early to mid 2000s kind of like pop style of music. Like, I don't know. Some of the stuff I heard sang in that game I believe wouldn't sound out of place out of like a Britney Spears album or something. Which I think works. And you have to think about it. The game is set in 2008. That's another thing.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah.
So that's kind of like why that time and place is very specific. So, and you have like tracks like that, these J-pop tracks mixed with like also these rap and hip hop tracks, and it just works so well. It creates such a unique soundscape to this game that I just am obsessed with. And it's not just the original tracks that they updated that do so well, but it's also the new songs. I think like some of the new stuff, like "It's Going Down," that is the name of the song, which is like a battle theme, is super fucking cool. The nighttime track, which is called "Color Your Night," the moment it kicks in is the first time you step out of your dorm at night to kind of explore the city a little bit, and it just like immediately just like pulls you into that song and into that world. Like it felt like a wave crashing over me. I'm just like, I just have to sit here and just put my controller down and just absorb this song for a second.
Yeah.
It's a moment. Like everything about this game is a moment, and I don't want to spoil elements of the story too. Like that, what also makes it special. But the thing that really solidified it as one of the best games I ever played is like all these moments, all these like the laughs, the heart-wrenching stuff that you experience, the just the wonderful times that you spend with these people, and you really feel like that like these characters are friends with each other and they're so tight with each other. But I think this game has one of the best endings to a video game ever. It is like it's hard for me to think of many other games that have where like the last couple of hours ripped me as much as this game did. I literally could not put down the controller. Like, it's intense. I was like, there were like hype as fuck moments. There were moments where I was like like I was just tears bawling my fucking eyes out that I couldn't believe all this was happening. Just everything. It was just amazing. If there was a comparison I could make for you is reaching, people are going to shoot me for saying this, reaching the ending of Persona 3 and going through those last few hours felt like the last bits of Endgame. That's literally what it is. You feel all the stakes. Yeah. You see all these characters coming together, but you're also getting all those moments where like characters are making these choices, like hard hitting shit, like everything, like even down to things that like, you know, spoiler alert, like Tony Stark dying and stuff like that, like moments like that where like characters have to make sacrifices.
Tony Stark dies in Persona 3? What? Yeah. This game's amazing.
Yeah. Well, it's yeah, like I said, people are gonna kill me for making a comparison like that, but that's kind of how it felt. Like just like the highs and low, well, I guess it is all highs, but like the highs of going from I'm laughing to I'm hyped to I'm fucking crying my eyes out.
Because Tony Stark died.
It's all there. Yeah, just Tony Stark died. Actually, the ending of this game is you don't really do anything. You just go back to the dorm and you put on Endgame and you just watch it for the last 2 hours. But it's
I don't know why this is a really funny image in my head. I'm just like, yeah, you don't get not Iron Man. It's not Iron Man. It's just Tony Stark without a suit is just one of your companions in that game. He's just like all these people are just like teenagers, and it's just like middle-aged Robert Downey Jr. just doing his Tony Stark. He's got a freaking scotch in one hand.
I mean, you know what? The game is set in 2008. The first Iron Man movie is coming out, so I mean, I don't know. It may not be that far-fetched.
Yeah.
But
maybe this game is good.
Yeah. But I think Persona 3 Reload is like, it's my first time experiencing this game. And I think that's why I love it so much. It has such a special story that means so much to me personally now, just because it gets me to reflect on my own life and what I want out of it and what it means to me. And because it makes everything feel just so special, it's like, damn, like I can't think of any other game that's quite like this. There's not many. There are some, but not many.
So
and I'm yeah.
So I didn't want to injure because I was about to ask a question that was going to derail you. So what were you about to say?
I guess what I want to say is like, I feel like I really want to bring up Persona 3 Reload because one, it's probably not going to be talked about a lot because it is a remake, and remakes sometimes are kind of like what we mentioned before with DLC, which is like, should this be listed as like a game of the year type thing? I am of the opinion of both things, where I'm like, I believe a DLC and the remake, if they are that good and they do feel that special to you as the player to hit you in that moment like that, I believe they are deserving to be game of the year. Absolutely. And that's the way it is for me with Reload. It's very likely my opinion would have changed if I would have played this game beforehand, before the remake. But honestly, you know what? That didn't happen. So I love the game as is. I love Reload. It is the definitive version for me. Big props to Atlas on this. And I know kind of the game that overshadowed it was another Atlas game, which was Metaphor.
Okay, so that was my question of, have you played Metaphor, and is it comparable? Is it, because to me that was the one I saw more news for. I mean, obviously, like, I knew Persona 3 came out, I saw people hyped about it. Metaphor was the one that, like, people really liked because it was the new Persona-like game.
Yeah. And, like, I'll just say, no, I have not played it. I've not even touched it. I haven't even touched the demo. But and I feel like this is where I have to step in for Robert, and like I have to kind of echo his points on this too. Is that he played through both games. He played through Metaphor. He played through Persona 3 Reload. And when we were talking, he told me that like he loved Metaphor. He think it is Atlas like at their peak, top of their game, just kicking ass, building the best game they can, and he think Metaphor was great. But he said, even despite that, Persona 3 Reload was still his game of the year. And I kind of resonate with that. I'm like, I feel that, man. I don't know how likely that would have changed if I did play Metaphor, and we'll probably get into the reason of why I didn't later. But that's okay. I think Persona 3 Reload is just such a special game. I think its story has proved itself to be timeless. I think its gameplay is a lot more accessible now, so more people will be willing to play it. And I think its art style will ensure this game will never quite age out ever.
Yeah.
So there's not much more I can add to this. Hopefully, Robert, if you're listening to this, I did us justice on this. I tried to channel as much as you as I can, especially when I brought up dungeon crawling mechanics, because I really don't like to get into the nitty gritty that much, but I know you do. So I'm trying my best here.
Can't wait for the top comment of this video to be Robert. Just like, I disagree with everything Seth says. I think Persona 3 is a disgrace. No. All right. Well,
yeah.
I believe that is Arn, yours, and probably Robert's game of the year. And for any of those who are very curious, like, what was Randy's game of the? It was Baldur's Gate 3 again. Or I mean, if you want to be specific, it's like he also really liked the Hades 2 demo, but
early
that
access.
game, yeah, early access, not demo. Which I also got to play, and yes, it was fun. I got to the final boss, but then I stopped because I played it. I was playing it on his Steam Deck on a train to New Orleans, and I was like, okay, I've made it to the final boss. I'm gonna hand it back to you because I want to do that on my own because I've already done way too much on this demo. And there's a lot of stuff that has not been added. So, Hades 2 demo, really good. And that is technically all 4 of our Game of the Years. But that wasn't the only games that we played this year. We also played some things that didn't come out in 2024, but were new to us. We'll call this category Best New to Me Game. Whoa. We've done this 3 years now. So yeah, I started off last time. So Seth, I'm gonna ask you to continue to talk again. What was the new game to you this year? It didn't come out in 2024, but it was. But this is when you were able to play it.
So this is gonna be another segment, I guess, of the podcast called "Making Poor Financial Choices with Seth." Because in order for me to play this game that I really like that didn't come out this year, it did cost a lot of money. Granted, I think there's a cheaper way to go about it, and I'm going to share that with you.
Okay.
But so it is a VR game, and if you know anything about VR, it's expensive.
Yeah.
So here's my recommendation. How I did it is that I found out that when the MetaQuest 3 came out and when the PlayStation VR 2 came out, which are the more accessible VR options out there, where basically they're the options where you don't need a giga monster computer to run it, and it's not going to cost you $1,000 to run. Mm-hmm. But the PlayStation VR 2 and the MetaQuest 3 are both still really expensive right now. But because those are out, the older models of stuff is actually really cheap comparatively. So I picked up a MetaQuest 2 for about $200.
Yeah.
This also depends on how much are you willing to sell part of your morality off to deal with a technological oligarch like Meta getting your money. I did sell my soul, so I could get a MetaQuest fucking 2.
Clearly.
But in all honesty, if you want to get into VR, here's the thing. There's a big conversation about is VR a worthwhile gaming thing? I would argue, yes, it is, but you need to get it at the price that works for you. Just simply put, you just need to get it at a price that works for you, because I personally believe spending how much they want for the MetaQuest 3 and for the PlayStation VR 2, which, by the way, PlayStation VR 2, I believe, also still requires you to have a PlayStation 5, so that would easily break $1,000. And you haven't even bought a game yet.
Yeah.
So this is why I say this is only for people who are really, really into this stuff and is very interested and wants to give it a go, because I promise you this will be... It's actually fun and worthwhile. Okay, now that I explained how you set up and get the VR system,
Yes.
and don't spend like an arm and a leg to do it.
And now we play the game.
Yeah, now we play the game.
Yeah.
Basically, buy the cheap used car version that you can online. Like, go to Craig. Actually, don't go to Craigslist. You'll probably get stabbed.
Steal it from your neighbor. Got it.
Yeah, that might be easier. If you can just break into your neighbor's apartment, like wait till they go to work, that's probably a lot easier.
Yeah.
Just do that.
There you go. So I've stolen a VR, Seth. Okay, what's next?
Then you download Resident Evil 4 VR.
Okay, gotcha.
That's okay. So there's my game.
Yeah, we got there eventually, folks. He said the name.
Yeah. I have to preface it because I really do not want people to go spend way too much money on this stuff. But like that being said, though, after downloading and playing Resident Evil 4 VR, and mind you, this is not the remake. This is OG Resident Evil 4 made for VR. Good God Almighty, man! It's gotta be. It made all the stuff setting up VR and like paying for it and all this jazz. All of it was worth it when I booted up Resident Evil 4 VR because good God, that game is so well done. It's amazing how, because you played Resident Evil 4, Drew.
Yes.
We talked about this.
Yes.
We did a whole podcast.
We did a whole podcast. And that whole podcast you can watch on the Fresh Podcast YouTube page, which you are, or on like Snapchat, wherever else you get your podcast. And it's the exact page that we're talking on right now. So go check that out. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah.
And like, Robert made a short about it. I forgot about that one.
Yeah. We've actually have two shorts about it.
We do have two shorts about it. Yes, I made one as well. Wow. Yeah, just plugs everywhere. I also made some Marvel Rivals. Watch those as well. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, and then Robert also said the remake of that game was his game of the year. We've talked a lot about Resident Evil 4 on this podcast, and to be honest, it's not ending anytime soon. What I love is like we talked about back then how even though that game came out in 2005, the gameplay and its world and everything just felt so good and like still holds up so well despite its age. Mm-hmm. And who knew that like largely a lot of the gameplay elements are still the same, but they work so well in VR. First off, obviously Resident Evil 4 originally third person. Arguably the granddaddy of how most third-person shooters would work going forward. And then just going into that world, experiencing it all in first person, it addresses one of the issues that maybe I had with Resident Evil 4 VR, or Resident Evil 4 originally, is that, like, not that really scary of a game outside of certain sequences. When you're in first person and you're wearing a VR headset, suddenly everything is a lot more intimidating, a lot creepier.
I bet that chainsaw man's terrifying.
Yeah,
when you're staring at him with your real eyes.
Yeah, the chainsaw dude, scary. The Verdugo boss fight, pants shittingly scary now. The bridge sequence where you're dealing with the creature that chases you, and you have to you have to shoot certain things to open them up and all that crap. Scary. It makes having Resident Evil 4 in VR makes it scary again, but it also feels fun, especially since you also kind of feel like John Wick in that game, where you're basically just kind of like enemies are running at you and you're like quickly like flipping between them and like with the pistol and you're like kneecapping them and then running up and like fucking punching or kicking them or whatever in the face. It feels so good. The combat in first person VR, it just feels so well done. It's so immersive. The puzzles are even redone for VR, so it's like you do like the light puzzle at the church where you're like messing with like 3 levers and you actually get to see it all come together. The fact that you could even go inside the church and look up and see the ceiling and just you could feel how small you are in that space. It just feels amazing, dude.
Yeah.
Uh,
I definitely think of
it's
like any of the Resident Evils. This definitely was the one to like be VR. Like, yes, obviously because like it's super popular and like it's the most real. Like, yeah, that's why they pick it. But also like, I don't think like 1 and 2, because of how enclosed those spaces are, and like that mansion, I don't think it would work as well. It'd probably be way more claustrophobic versus 4 of just like it has a good mixture of that claustrophobic energy and then also being out and seeing the environment, just how detailed everything is.
oh yeah.
So I think 4 is definitely like the best pick for it. And then like 3 maybe could have worked, and then yeah, 5 and 6 don't actually exist. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think 4 is such a good pick for this.
Yeah, and I think like 4 is definitely the best like kind of pioneer of this. I definitely think all of the games could work in VR, but especially 4. I feel like 4 just has that classic bit of gameplay behind it. I think also we talked about this before. Resident Evil 4 is the fun horror game.
Yeah.
It's even though I still need to watch it, it's the Evil Dead 2 where it's like, yes, it has its spooky moments, but it's also actually badass in a couple of parts and also really goofy in other parts as well. And it just makes it like it's like a fun theater experience. Like you go and sit down and you're like, this was just fun. I got to experience all the emotions. I got to be scared. I got to laugh. I got to be like, that's fucking sick.
This game's awesome.
Yeah. I can't think of many horror movies where someone cried at them, but hey, you know what? Maybe you found something. But that's kind of the experience I had with Resident Evil 4 VR. It's a testament to one, how well that game still holds up, and also like it gives a new way of truly experiencing that game that makes it equal parts familiar and fresh at the same time. And I'm just like, oh my god, it's perfect. And there's so many cool new strategies you have because you're in VR. So you know about those little tripwire bombs where like there's a wire across the way. Usually you have to shoot it or go around it.
Mm-hmm.
In VR, you can actually just physically go prone, crawl under it, and go on the other side. And I would lure enemies to it because they're fucking dumb as shit.
Wait.
And
So does
blow
this
themselves up.
Because like going prone in VR, is that just you physically in real life getting on the ground?
Yeah.
So
No,
it's-
dude, like I'm telling you,
if anyone walked in, they would just see you
I was
on your
jungle
belly,
crawl.
just crawling.
No, dude, I was channeling every fucking like military movie thing or whatever I watched, where like Jarhead or whatever, where they're like having to crawl under the barbed wire. I was that shit, you know, bro. I was like I would jungle crawl in that motherfucker. And it's cool. It feels awesome. And when I say, listen, it's
great.
also the
I
perfect
love
time.
that.
Like, if you ever and this is not just exclusive to Resident Evil 4 VR, but if you ever just had that moment where you wanted to pretend like you're John Wick, where maybe you do finger guns and like you do like pop pop pop, like where he holds like kind of the gun sideways or whatever, and he's like cut, like do really quick shots and stuff like that. You get to live that out in this game, and then like actually shoot virtual people. I should clarify.
Yeah.
But it's so cool. So just like bam, bam, and like just it's fun. You get to it. The best way I could put it is putting on the VR headset and experiencing the world of Resident Evil 4 in that made me feel like a kid again, which is how much fun like simple things were.
Yeah.
I
But
could
shooting
just
a
like
gun
you know
in,
how
like most video games, like yeah, whatever, I've done it a million times. But like when I think VR just adds it to just the experience of gaming more because it is such like a oh yeah, I'm doing this.
Mm-hmm. Not to mention because you can manually reload the thing, so you basically like eject the is it magazine or clip? Fuck it, who cares?
Yeah.
You eject the magazine and then you put it in and you rack the slide of the gun. It's like, oh my god, it feels so good. So like literally, but also the game allows it to like you can like basically because it's not a set animation, you're doing whatever you want to just get the thing done. You can have fun with it. So literally in the middle of fights, it wouldn't always work. Sometimes I would end up in trouble for it, but I would actually like do trick reloads like the fucking old tactical reloads Freddie Wong videos,
Yeah.
where basically I would like throw the magazine in the air and then just grab my gun and just like swipe it in the air, catch the magazine with my gun, and then reload that way and shoot it. Like I would literally do that kind of shit, and it's so fun. It's fun to just. It was just it's like a fun game. It's one of the best. It is truly one of the best testaments of like how VR can be done well. And the reason I had to bring up MetaQuest 2 is that Resident Evil 4 version of the game is only available on MetaQuest. You have to get a MetaQuest for it.
Interesting.
But like it's fun. I would say do not pick up a MetaQuest just to play this game. I had a blast with it. I still have a blast with it. I like to go back and play through the story and do the mercenaries mode and stuff like that. And I think it's such a fun game. But at the same time, hey, this stuff isn't exactly like inexpensive and accessible yet. Yeah. But it does give me hope that with how well the MetaQuest 2, like paying just $200 for that and having fun with the games alone with it. And I have other games other than that. I also have like Skyrim VR and all that, which is a blast. I would recommend that. Hopefully in the future, I do think we might reach a point where VR does become accessible for people, and more people get to experience it and understand why it's so fun. I don't think we're there yet, but the Resident Evil 4 VR gives me hope that we're about to reach that future. And once again, props to the team for not just porting that game over, but making sure that it's actually like accessible and fun. Yeah. So like good job, team. I'm so proud of you.
All right.
You guys did a great job with it.
Wow. That's a pretty good game that came out that did not come out this year, but that you enjoyed. For me, myself, and also I had a couple contenders. I actually even almost put Elden Ring on here because I finally, because it went on sale for Christmas, have begun my Elden Ring journey. But I've finished that game because that's going to take me 3 years, including like the DLC and everything. But I did finish a different game that I really enjoyed, and that is Ghost of Tsushima. That game, and I am not the first person to say this, I will not be the last, that game is beautiful. That game is freaking gorgeous. Just like, and I've seen, clips of the game online and like people playing, but just like playing for yourself, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the power of the PS5 right now. We're putting work. It's beautiful, and it's one of those where like, I think I forget like who described it, but it's one of those things like your open world should have something to do for every like 15 seconds or 30 seconds of walking or just moving like with your mount in any direction. And Ghost of Tsushima does this thing in open worlds, and it's the best thing I've ever seen, where it has the perfect amount of stuff to do and rewards for doing that. Like you just go in a direction, and then you're like, oh, there's a hot spring there. Okay, I'll go and do that. Oh, there's like a village, but I get like a skill point for doing that. Okay, I'll do this because I want that reward and get this reward. But every time you do anything, every reward is significant enough that it is rewarding and building your person. Versus like, I'll use the Assassin's Creed series, because a couple of those games have issues of just like, there's a million like side quests or assassination things or just other things that really don't give you that much reward. They're quick to do, but they're kind of almost like, they essentially feel like chores. And you just do it just to clear it off your board, and you're like, well, it's on the way, I might as well do it. Ghost of Tsushima, yes, it has similar things, but nothing ever feels like a chore because of how you level up and the rewards you get for doing those. And that's always like a really satisfying feeling. It also has an incredibly amazing and immersive story. Jin is a super interesting character, along with his journey on like what honor is and like what he should do and do you stick to tradition and continue your ways, or do you, do what is necessary to save people? And I think his story is really interesting, and it takes like kind of the traditional tropes of like a Japanese samurai and also like a stealth, like a ninja assassin, and it takes those like tropes, puts them together, and it's like, what does it really look like when someone has to battle with these two essentially personalities or like gameplay types? What does that look like when you have to struggle about, hey, I have to win, but other people care about how I win, and that's the issue. So it's a great story, great main character. The only thing that the only complaint I would have about the game was after a long time, because it is a long game, the gameplay does kind of feel a bit stiff with all the different stances. But, especially nowadays, playing it now, with the DLCs, the DLCs fixed that a lot by having enemy types switch weapons mid-fight, so you have to manually switch stances. Or you could just do what I did, put the monkey suit on, which is the name of the outfit. Well, it has a cooler name than what I just called it, but essentially it just means it's so you do the same amount of damage to everyone, and you get this really cool counter parry move, but your parries are way tighter and you can't block anymore. And it makes the game so much fun because it makes it really dedicated to those perfect parries and dodges. And it, the spin and just counter attacks that you do are really fun, and it allows you to use whatever stance you want for people, because of just you can raw out damage stuff as long as you're hitting your parries. So that kind of almost it was very interesting playing the game and then getting to basically doing the DLC in the middle of the game and seeing oh, this was what feels like the developers fixed to people saying the gameplay got stiff. And I got to experience it after the fact. So Ghost of Tsushima is really fun, and I enjoy my time with it a lot. And I also will say, I'll talk about this now. I don't think it's my most anticipated game, but yes, Ghost of Tsushima 2 is coming out, I believe, late of this year. If you want to correct me, I believe so.
I do. Yeah, I think they said 2025. I don't know if they even set a time frame of when in 2025, but I'm pretty confident they did say 2025. Yeah. Ghost of Yotei.
Yeah, Ghost of Yotei. That game looks interesting. And I believe they even brought up, I know Ghost of Tsushima, I never got to play it, but it had a co-op multiplayer thing. And I think Ghost of Yotei is coming out with that kind of system. So I'm definitely excited for that. I will definitely be picking that up when it comes out and continuing this kind of story. I'm very curious on where that goes and how this story unfolds, if Jin comes back, or if he's even a part of this kind of story.
So I should point out that Ghost of Yotei is set somewhere around I think at least 200 years after the events of Ghost of Tsushima. So
Jin's probably doing something else.
Probably.
He might not. Okay.
I would say I will throw this out though. I wouldn't say he's not entirely gone from the game. They could probably do a flashback or something with him.
Yeah. But this is a memorial to the Ghost of Tsushima, and your character's who's that?
When I played through Tsushima, I did get the sense that that basically Jin Sakai was basically introducing something new to that world, of a new way of fighting, and I could see him the ghost becoming an inspiration for something like that.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, now that you've played through it, I always look at Ghost of Tsushima, I'm this is a fucking superhero origin story video game. When you think about it, that's what it is. It's literally him creating this this character, this persona to like strike fear in his enemies. It's fucking Batman.
Yeah, he's Japanese Batman. Yeah. I got it.
Which is cool. Which is really cool. I like that. So I feel like that's what Ghost of Yote. Nothing confirming this. I feel like you are going to be playing as a different ghost, but I feel like it's going to be someone who was inspired by Jin's actions to basically be like, we have to like fight in a way that perhaps is dishonorable, but it like,
wins.
This is a battle for survival, so it's like, okay, this will be interesting. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. I think going back to one of your earlier points, I think one of the things that helps Ghost of Tsushima stand out is, you're right. This was also one of the things I said about that a long time ago. That game first came out. It's not doing anything. Nothing that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
But what it is doing is, I think it's showing that even in an open world, pacing is important. I think that's what's most important, is like pacing out your content when players interact with it and making sure it's meaningful and worth their time. Because I feel like one of the issues with a lot of open world games nowadays, especially with like Ubisoft titles, is that there's just a lack of pacing everywhere. You're overwhelmed with too much content, and a lot of times you're already told what that content is going to do. And I think the issue is like that Ghost of Tsushima addresses it. Let's not have something that the player can do every 15 seconds. Let's pace it out so the player comes across it in a way that feels natural to them, and making sure that it's fun, interesting, and that it's worth their time doing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of like where the mantras that they had in place for that open world. So I definitely think Ghost of Tsushima is, my opinion, it's one of the best open world games out there, just because it understands that assignment so fucking well.
No, exactly. Yeah. It allows you to like go through the world and like makes you it also like makes you see the impact that your character is having on the world, you know? Like as you progress through the game, characters start calling you the ghost or start calling you like, you know, more than just Lord Sakai. You start seeing like, oh, this village is saved, and people, you know, respect me and are better for it. So you see your impact through the game. And I think the game is just like a really good job, and it's the perfect example of I don't think there's like an unfun or really like annoying challenge to do. Every like side mission or every like side quest, or just like random thing you find in the world is either really quick or just genuinely fun. There isn't really like an annoying like puzzle or annoying mechanic, or there's nothing that really is just like, I don't want to do this. I'm fine with doing any of the quests. They're all equally fun, and equally rewarding. So yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, definitely go check it out. Super fun game. Really had a blast with it. Cannot wait for that next one. But that's not the only most anticipated game of 2025, and that's a perfect segue to talk about our most anticipated games of 2025. Now, Seth, I don't know about you, but I have a list of like a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. I will have a definitive one, number one, and it might be a similar one to the one you talk about. But actually, I'll let you go first, just so I make sure we don't say the same one. What are you most excited about for 2025?
I definitely feel like this is not on the same list, but that's okay. That you were thinking, but I am interested in your answer. For me, the game I'm looking for is actually two of them, and I only listed these two is because, well, both these games are being developed by the same studio, and they're also going to be games in a very, I think, in some ways, a similar vein to each other. My games are Avowed and Outer Worlds 2. Both of them developed by Obsidian. both of them are going to be like they don't want to use the word open world, which is absolutely fair because they're not really open world. They're more like that kind of big open zone where you can explore, but it's a little bit more curated and careful than that, which I think more people are kind of gravitating towards nowadays than those big open worlds, which is nice. The reason I'm looking forward to it is one, it's shocking that Avowed and Outer Worlds 2 is supposed to be coming out this year. There's a part of me that says Outer Worlds 2 is probably going to get delayed out of this year. I'm just
That's
that
fair.
game-
Yeah.
yeah, like because like that game went from being announced in 2022, I believe, 2021 or 2022, to radio silence for many years to suddenly at the Game Awards at 2024, they're being like, yeah, it's coming out next year. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't believe you. Especially
Like,
since they did something
sure.
similar with Avowed, and they ended up having to delay that into 2025. So it's like, I at least appreciate they're trying to do their best to like refine that game and make sure it's in a good working spot beforehand. But yeah, the reason I'm looking forward to it is, in a weird way, one, Obsidian has kind of basically been eating Bethesda's lunch lately. They are really good. They're very good writers at Obsidian. They know how to build out a world and make it interesting. They know how to do quests and to present players a lot of options and make them feel like there's a lot of ways where they can come up with creative solutions to those quests while also role playing as their respective characters, a la like Baldur's Gate 3 kind of style. Like, I think they know their shit. And the fact that they're coming out with like these two games set in this world is so fun and it is so exciting. So for Avowed, first off, I think this is going to be interesting because I've actually, in anticipation for that game, I have been playing through Pillars of Eternity 2, which is the world that Avowed is going to be set in. It is set in the world of Aora, which is basically their own fantasy RPG take. The best way I can put it is a world where basically you are actively having to work around a world dominated by like gods and also a system of reincarnation that everybody is aware of and how that works. So it's a very fun, interesting RPG that I've really been enjoying. And at least for Pillars of Eternity 2 Deadfire, it's also a very pirate-themed RPG.
Yeah.
Because it's set in this like archipelago, so you do get to get your own ship. You do get to build up your own crew. You do get to sail the seas and like do naval combat and board ships and raid them for money and supplies and gold, and treasure and weapons and all that jazz. On top of it being like a really solid like RPG akin to something like a Baldur's Gate 3. One of the things that I feel like I could sell the idea of Pillars of Eternity 2 on is there was a quest I had to do where I had to get revenge against a pirate captain who fucked me over at the start of the game. So how I got revenge on him is there's multiple ways to resolve it. But how I chose to resolve it is I heard that like, at this particular pirate fort where we all like to hang out, like our Tortuga, he likes to, when the party really gets going and the grog gets flowing, he really likes to come down and play on the harpsichord. So basically, in order to lure him out, I first have to get this party like going. So I have to like steal like special rum from like guards and like steal it from under the nose and bluff my way past them and all that jazz. And then I have to get like this lady to help cook the soup that has gunpowder in it for some reason. I don't know. Pirates are weird.
Sure.
Anyways,
Yeah, like gunpowder soup.
but-
Yeah, no, sounds great.
yeah, but once the party gets jamming, then what I do is it's like, all right, you know what? I'm not gonna face this dude honorably. So I basically go over to the harpsichord he likes to play, and I rig a grenade in it. So whenever the guy comes down, he just fucking starts playing the harpsichord and blows the fuck up. And I was like, this is awesome. And what's cool about that is after doing that, most of the people was like, oh man, this whole place is gonna be hostile towards me. Everybody was like, you know what? We're pirates. That guy was a dick anyway. We didn't like him.
Yeah, fuck that dude.
And they just like, yeah, that's awesome. So the fact that you had so many choices and the way that you could resolve that quest, because apparently you can ally with him, you can intimidate him to leave, you can actually steal his ship. Like, there's so many ways that you could have dealt with that beyond just fighting and killing him. And I really love that. So I'm really interested to see if they did that with a top-down CRPG style game. I'm really curious to see what Obsidian can pull off in first person with Avowed. And the same thing goes for Outer Worlds 2. I loved Outer Worlds 1, and Outer Worlds 2 I think is just going to be more of that, and I'm excited.
Cool.
So yeah, Year of Obsidian. Let's do it.
I love it. All right. So Outer Worlds 2 is your big pick?
Or Avowed.
Or Avowed. Okay, either or. Sure.
Yeah,
all right.
it's both of them. Although I think it's just going to end up being Avowed because honestly, I don't think Outer Worlds 2 is coming out this year. I just have doubts.
It's hopeful thinking. Well, I did want to. I'm gonna probably say a bunch of games here, but I will have a definitive number one. First of all, some fighting games that are coming out. Galro, Mark of the Wolves. Traditionally, I haven't been, and neither has Robert, been a big King of Fighters fan, but technically Galro is a fail-free title, and just from the gameplay of it, it looks really cool. It's flashy. They have a very, the first Galro I actually did play when it went on sale, and it actually is really fun. They have a very unique system where you basically, at the start of the match, put this small bar on either the beginning, middle, or very end of your health bar. And when your health is at that point, you get access to a new move and some really cool stuff. So and it's a cool mechanic, and that's some really fun characters in that. Also, the worst named, but I think really cool looking fighting game this year is 2XKO. This is the League of Legends fighting game, and especially after watching Arcane, I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for this. Never will touch the League of Legends though, because everyone says they hate that game but continues to play it. But the fighting game looks super cool. It's got a very interesting 2v2 mechanic, so I will definitely check that out when it comes out. I've already talked about Ghost of Tsushima 2, and we've also briefly mentioned Hades 2, that is currently in early access. But the two that I really want to talk about, the first one I thought was the one that you were going to pick, which is Elden Ring Night Reign, which is the one that was just shown off. We just found out about it, which is essentially a co-op kind of boss raid mode standalone Elden Ring game, which we did not think we were going, which I think that really interests me because it's more classy, it's less building, it seems to be a bit more focused, and also characters are kind of moving like how Sekiro characters move. They're flipping around and jumping. There's one character with wing. It seems they're bringing some old bosses back from the Dark Souls series. So definitely super excited about that. But the big one that I am excited for, because by God, they've nailed it on every single one of these games that come out. But Doom Dark Ages is so freaking cool looking. The Doom, what more do you want to say about the Doom games? From Doom 2016 to Eternal, they're just so much fun. And he's got a Captain America shield in this one. I think we've talked about it before, but it also does kind of look like this one might be a bit more it just seems to be a bit more enemies and a bit more horde shooter type, which is tons and tons of stuff on the screen. Which the Doom games have kind of been like that, but not really. But especially with this kind of being a prequel and this kind of going back to this is him during I forget what it's called in the lore, like the Blood Wars or something.
Yeah.
I can definitely see this being just like waves and waves of enemies. But I mean, gosh, the Doom games are like, what a cool series. Like, what just like the perfect, just like, hell yeah, dude, bro series of just, yeah, we're just killing demons, just blood and guts, and just, like, hey, how do I get more ammo back? Oh, use your chainsaw to cut this one in half, and it'll refill all the ammo in your gun. Like, what? It's just pure fun, have been the previous one. So I'm just like, I am so excited to go and play a new Doom game. And I'm just going to be gushing about it for a while. I have a lot of high expectations for Dark Ages. The one thing that is kind of nursing, it is not the same musical composer as the previous two games. Had a falling out with them, which is unfortunate. You don't love to see that.
Yeah, I think it was like over issues of like pay and stuff for like even all the way back with Doom 2016, which I hate. I feel like the music will be good because I think if I remember correctly, they're getting Andrew Hulshult, which is he's a great composer. He's done like a lot of like sort of indie kind of boomer shooters that are obviously inspired by Doom 2016 in recent years. So he's done a lot of the music for that. Actually, the re-release that they did of Doom 1+2, this past year, which was also really fucking good, also featured remastered tracks from him, like kind of remixing the old tracks of Doom with like more modern sensibilities. Dude understands the assignment. He's gonna knock it out of the park. I think he's gonna do great. I think we do not have if it is him. I think it is. I could be wrong. But if it is Andrew Hulshult, trust me, you do not need to worry.
Yeah.
This music's gonna be banger. It just more sucks that like Mick Gordon seemed to love Doom so much and work so well with the team at first, and it's just such a shame that like that they're not treating that. I don't like. It does seem to be, and I don't want to jump too much into like the politics or drama of it, but it does seem like that there's a little bit of some egos going around with like some of like the game directors, and just the simple fact of like they seem to not want to like fairly compensate the musician for whatever reason, and I don't like that. That sucks. That's not fair to him.
Because like Mike McDonald's work is so sick, and it's what gave the first two Dooms like their personalities. And so that's
in fact, that's the heart and soul of Doom, even back to the '90s, like for shooters. Like, yes, it is an ancient MIDI soundtrack, but God, like because of how well it's composed and stuff, it's so iconic. So like, the music is as important as any other aspect of the game. How good like the fucking guitar riffs are in Doom is just important to how the super shotgun sounds when you fucking pull the trigger on that thing.
Yeah.
Both are equally important, and you cannot. Yeah, I feel like you cannot have a good Doom game without good music. So while I have no doubt Doom Dark Ages will be a great game, I'm fully expecting it to kick ass. I'm just bummed out that like it's come at the cost of like of a relationship between the musical genius behind Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal and that team. It just sucks.
Yeah,
no,
it definitely does.
You never. Yeah, it feels like a divorce, and it's just kind of like, all right, you got to pick between mommy and daddy now. It's like, good God,
a little bit, yeah. But
in all seriousness, yeah, I hate that. It sucks, but I'm also excited for Doom: The Dark Ages, especially since I have actually spent a lot of this last year playing through Doom plus Doom 2. And also, not only was that re-release awesome because it was Doom and Doom 2, and also all of the expansions released for that, they released a whole new campaign for built-in Doom and Doom 2 called Legacy of Rust, which is a phenomenal fucking expansion pack to Doom 2, where it has a new campaign that is like 6 to 8 hours long, so it's already longer than the original Doom 2 fucking campaign, which is insane. but also it has really well done levels, really good unique music. The art is fantastic. The new enemy types they added in are cool. They also added in a fucking flamethrower as a new weapon and a weapon called the Calamity Blade, which basically shoots out a searing blade of flames that cuts enemies in half.
Jesus.
And this is all built in the old 90s engine of Doom, which is fucking nuts to me. So yeah, there's a lot of Doom love to share around the world, and I think I'll definitely be there day one for Doom Dark Ages. So yeah, I'm excited for that game too. You brought up all this stuff, and you brought up Night Rain too, which the only thing I'm going to say about Night Rain that you mentioned is to me, and this is definitely a joke I'm stealing from someone else. Thank you, Blessing Adeoye Jr. from Kind of Funny for this joke, but I totally agree with this. It feels like FromSoft looked at Elden Ring and they're like, fuck it, we're going to be in the Game of the Year conversation every year. Yeah. So first they put up fucking Shadow of the Erdtree, which caused a huge stir to be nominated for Game of the Year. And then after Shadow of the Erdtree came out, they were like, no plans for a sequel for Elden Ring, no DLC. So that was a fucking lie.
Yeah.
And I agree. Night Rain looks cool. And I think the thing that makes it most interesting for me is everything you said. Plus, now that you played Elden Ring, I love that game. But God, it's such a big, long game. So it's actually, and every now and then I do get that urge to like want to play Elden Ring, but I'm kind of like, do I really want to make a new build? Do I really want to play this many hours and go through all this to get to the boss fights and stuff? Whereas Night Rain seems to be designed to be that, like, hey, you can just boot up this game and go. Get in and get your Elden Ring fix. And it's like, awesome. That's what I want.
Yeah, that is kind of one of the things that is like, yeah, Elden Ring's been super fun. Gosh dang it. It is a lot of just running around environments, though. Like, that's not
it's a big game.
Yeah, that's not the part of the game that people really show about or talk about, like, in videos and stuff. Just like, yeah, you gotta... It's a big game. You got shit to do. You got miles to put in.
Elden Ring is like it's a very fun game to, like, both experience, like, the boss fights and stuff, but I also feel like it's a really... Elden Ring is that game where it's just, like, you might need some music to help zone you out, like listen to some MF Doom or something like that, just something to like relax you.
Yeah, no. Every time I like play Elden Ring, I got like a YouTube video playing in the background as well. I usually got like Critical Role or like Dimension 20, like a D&D related thing. So it's like a 2-hour long YouTube video, I'm just going.
Yeah, it just. It's one of the things where we're getting older, and it's just kind of like, hey, I would have loved this game whenever I was like fucking 15 and had nothing better to do.
Yeah.
But good God, maybe it's too big. It's too fucking big. I cannot believe how much the developers of Elden Ring lie. But for good reason, because they actually end up underselling it. There were people who said, like, yeah, it should take most people to beat Elden Ring about 20 to 30 hours. That's a fucking lie.
That's a fun. Maybe like a New Game Plus run, maybe, but...
No, that is some horse shit. I cannot believe they said that. But yeah, so I'm excited for that. I'm also this whole talk of like the Souls type DLC with Elden Ring and how it got into the conversation. The other thing, and I'm hoping it comes out this year. Everything's been kind of quiet lately, but I really want us to revisit Liza P and its DLC.
Yeah,
like I feel like
I
feel like Shadow of the Erdtree came out, and after playing through, I was like, man, that DLC was so cool, so fun, and it just made me look over at like Liza P. It's like, all right, fellas. What do you got? I'm like, this was great. I want to see what you guys can do.
I'm super excited. I would love to hear more news about Liza P DLC. Because still, I would make an argument. It might still be my favorite Souls game. We're going through it right now, and everyone says that's like the cream of the crop. But like right now, I'm like, I don't know. Liza P had probably the best like
like game direction, as well as like I could tell what the heck the story was. Good level up system, was challenging but not like frustratingly bad, was really welcoming to new players. I'm like, yeah, I want more from these people. I want to see what they I want to see more of what they can do.
I'm kind of curious to see what in Liza P. What and granted they did their own very much interpretation of the story or the original story and all that, like of that sort of story / fairy tale or whatever.
Yeah.
I kind of wonder what story they would tackle, because they kind of hinted at the end like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz and stuff like that.
See, I feel like that's gonna be more a
sequel.
I think that's a sequel. What I think my theory for the DLC, I don't know how well you remember the Pinocchio story. But there's a part of it where he like goes out to sea and like gets swallowed by a whale. And I think one of the DLC shots was him on essentially like what looked to me like a pirate ship.
That'd be cool.
So I think that's gonna be his thing. I think one of your fights is probably gonna be against a whale. I'm calling it now. You're probably at some point going to fight a whale.
That actually makes the most sense, and that would be cool. It'd be kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm in a pirate mood lately.
Yeah.
And I would love for like a pirate theme setting for Liza P. That'd be fucking sick, dude. I would definitely be down for that. Give him the fucking flintlock pistol. Anyways, I have
screw it. Just make it Bloodborne. Just make his arm a pistol and make it a parry. Just
cool.
Turn it into Bloodborne.
That would be sick.
Yeah.
I have another thing, and I have nothing to base this on, but I actually really like the idea of them taking like fairy tales or older stories or classic literature and doing like crossovers and stuff. I don't know why. I feel like this would be cool, and if it would work. And you would probably say, well, they already kind of have a boss fight that's like that. It's like, that's true, but I'd still want it. I would love like a Frankenstein crossover with Liza P. I don't know why. I just like that idea a lot. Granted, Champion Victor was kind of very Frankenstein-esque.
Yeah.
But like, it might be because I keep seeing clips from Creature Commandos with like the Bride and Frankenstein and all that lately. But all I could think is like, fuck, wouldn't that be cool if they took like some of that like classic literature like that, or hell, go all in, fucking get Nosferatu in there, Pinocchio versus Count Orlok. Now,
I see. I watched, because from all the clips, I also just watched Creature Commando today. Yeah, I would love that Frankenstein. Or heck yeah, Let Me Fight the Bride. I would love either of those. That's also a very good show, by the way. It's pretty good. It's incredibly short. It's only like
first of the new
8 episodes.
Cool. And it's also the first of the new DC universe now, which I heard is off to a great start.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty good. Cool. And this one does kind of like this was already confirmed, but it does confirm that like basically everything that James Gunn has done is canon. So like, except for the stuff with like obviously like Batman, or like basically the cameo in Peacemaker. So like Peacemaker is canon. His Suicide Squad movie is canon. Which is cool. Now I'm fine with that, because those are the good parts of the DC universe. But anyway, we're not here talking about the future of the DC universe. That's gonna be a different podcast. We are here talking about, I think it's time for our brand new category.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yes. So, this one, as you said, we're not doing Most Disappointed this year. We are doing the best wish list game, which essentially is, these are games that are currently out. They are out right now. They are on our wish list, or just we've already purchased them. Maybe even we just haven't gotten around to playing them because there's just so many good games and so many good things to do.
Yeah, man.
So I think I'm going to start us off, because I think this is a game that we've hinted at already, and I think both of us want to talk about already. And now, to be fair, I'm kind of already breaking the rules of my new category, because I have started playing this. but I'm nowhere close to beating. You might have beaten it. I don't remember if I've talked to you since you've been it.
I didn't think I would have it beaten in time for the podcast, but yeah, I have. I actually beaten it and 100%ed it.
Yeah, but this is a game we were all surprised that was good. Indiana Jones and the Golden Circle. Yes.
Great Circle.
Great Circle. I knew I was gonna mess it up.
The Golden Circle is Kingsman.
That's what I'm thinking of. That's why I got it mixed up. You're right. Anyway, yeah, the Great Circle. What a game that has no right to be good. Like an Indiana Jones game in our Lord 2024, and just like on paper, like a first-person Indiana Jones game with Bethesda. I think like, and with all the trailers and stuff that came out, I remember I saw this and I was like, I'm probably gonna play it, but I was not expecting it to be like, expectations were really low for me. Of just like, it's just gonna be a linear, like Tomb Raider, like, you know, first person, probably nothing interesting in the story. And I was just pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh wait, no, like there's unique puzzles in it. The story is intriguing. The combat is surprisingly intuitive. For like, I'll let you talk more because like I think you're better and kind of have a more grasp on the hand-to-hand combat stuff. But even I can feel like, oh, this is like more involved. It's a pretty fun stealth mechanics if you want to do that. I love how many different animations there are for all the random just weapons you can pick up. And that's kind of one thing of just like, these developers understand Indiana Jones and like how he fights and gets around the world. Because if you go back and watch the movie, yes, he's a scrapper and a brawler and he fights with his fists a lot, but so many of his fights end with him just picking up a random thing from like the environment, and it's almost like slapstick comedy. He beats someone over with like a random chair he finds, or he just like grabs a rock and throws it at him and just starts hitting him with it. And he uses his environment so much. Like, you know, one of all of his most famous kills are like him pushing a guy into like a fan or something, like a giant fan or in a pole ant
propellant.
Yeah, the propellant. And this game does that really well. Just like there's so many just random objects, from like shovels to frying pans to guitars to batons to like, there's so many things that you can just pick up in this game and just break off over somebody's head. And that's a really fun thing. An interesting level up system, and yeah, this game, it's been fun, and I'm so pleasantly surprised that it's actually good. But it's longer than I expected, and I just haven't gone around to like to really getting all the way through it and really beating it. But so let me ask your opinion on the game, since this is a game that you just said you beat and even 100%ed.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely top 10. I do want to point out, like, even though technically it is under that Bethesda publishing branch, they didn't make the game. It was actually Machine Games. They're the people behind the Wolfenstein games, which are great. Wolfenstein is great, but I think that was the thing we were kind of expecting, wasn't it? Where whenever this game was first announced and we saw it was being done by the Wolfenstein people, I think many of us just kind of expected, like you said, it was like, it's either going to be something like the Uncharted or Tomb Raider type games, or since it's in first person, maybe it'll even be like a T-rated Wolfenstein where you just like, I mean, and it's fun, but like you just kind of go around and shoot them up. But yeah, you're right. This game feels more like an immersive sim with how interactive the environment is. I think that's like the best part about it, is just how much fun you can have with the environment. You know, tripping people over, shoving them off of like cliffs or into water, or like yanking them into it with your whip, which is fun. The amount of stuff that you could pick up and just use in a fight, like, yeah, I agree with you. I think it's funny like how much of this game is basically, or is so true to the films, because you basically are just like cracking like brooms over people's heads and shit. I think one thing it does really well with the stealth, and like, it's funny. I wish Randy was here because we talked about this. Is one of the issues I have with stealth sometimes is like with stealth sometimes it's like, oh, you just run up and go up behind them and you press a button, you get the one hit KO. And while you still do that in this game, the fact that like before you could do that, you gotta have to have like a breakable weapon to do that is actually really fun. Like I really like the animation where Indy uses a glass bottle and he just kind of pokes them to turn around and then just fucking like whacks them as hard as he can. Like it's such good, like, as you put it, yeah, slapstick kind of stuff. I really like also, this might be one of my favorite stealth detection systems in a game, because I also really like the fact that even when you get into a fight with the guy, it doesn't immediately alert everybody.
Yeah.
Like I like that you could just kind of get into a fist fight and not everybody's aware of it. Some people will say, oh, it's dumb AI. I personally think it's fine because I'm pretty sure there are actually a lot of moments in the movies where it's like Indy just knocks out like a fucking like Nazi guard while the other is just like
There's a specific scene where like literally I think it's in it's in Raiders. It's in the first movie where like first off, Indy survives getting dragged hundreds of miles on top of a submarine and has all of his skin. That's a different issue. But he gets out and like two like Nazi guards are like, all right, watch the predictor. One turns to the left, the other turns to the right. The one that turns to the right gets sucker punched and then dragged away, and then the guy that turned to the left just walks away. Like we do just hear the big sound. And like, all right.
Another thing I like too is the sound design. Also, yeah, like you point out the one. That's a good that's a good way to address all the haters who are like the AI is too dumb in Indiana Jones. It's just like it's lore accurate. Actually,
it is. It's lore accurate. Yeah, not because Nazis are stupid. So yeah, it's
I feel like that's the whole
accurate.
point of these games. It's just like they're dumb as fuck. But I also like a lot of the little touches that make it feel like the movies. I swear they basically made the sound of Indy's punches to be gunshots. Like I swear,
dude, because again, that's how it is in the movie. It's lore accurate. Because if you go back to the movies, it does sound like a it's like a comic book how it goes like pow at the punch, and it's so loud and dramatic. I love it. Sorry, I'm a big Indiana Jones fan.
No, it's awesome. I think I really like this idea of like, instead of just trying to take Indiana Jones and squeeze it into a type of game, they were like, how can we make an Indiana Jones game and keep it as faithful to the style that it would be in the movies? You know, because after beating the game, I hardly ever used guns ever. It was very rare for me because I often found it was more fun to play through the game without guns.
Yeah. Also, if you do try to use gun, it is like that is the one thing that will get every enemy in. I remember there were a couple instances where I all right, I'm gonna shoot this one guy, bang, and I just saw like 15 red exclamation points pop up on my screen. Like, oh yeah, I guess this would alert everyone. Shit. So I think it's the game kind of even like
a last resort.
Yeah, the game kind of encourages like you really don't want to use guns if you can avoid it.
Right.
So, but still, it's fun.
Yeah, it's still a viable playstyle, just a little bit more difficult than you would expect.
Yeah. But you still can use the gun, just push X to flip it upside down and use it as like a hammer, essentially.
I do like the fact that like you could basically just turn any gun into just a melee weapon again, which is very funny. One more thing I want to point out with Indiana Jones is just to point out how well, and I'm not the first person to point this out, I just seen other people point out, it seems like during the cutscenes in the Great Circle, the way the camera is handled and shot, I notice, is very different from like other video game cutscenes, because it's something that you realize that the thing with video game cutscenes is because it's a virtual camera, you can kind of set the camera to record from anywhere. So you can kind of make your shots come from anywhere. But what it felt like with the Great Circle that I noticed from honestly the very first scene of the game, which is a flashback to Raiders of the Lost Ark, the opening sequence, it's like, oh, it feels like even though this is a video game, they purposely made certain camera shots be certain angles where it seemed like Machine Games was like, if they couldn't pull this shot off back then, we're not doing it. Like some things felt like dolly shots where they would like things like the camera would move in and there's that little bit of like a shakiness to it because it's riding on the dolly and stuff like that. And I'm like, fuck, you're right. Ever since they pointed out, I played the rest of the game and they're absolutely right. The camera is always shot in a very specific way, and it's so fucking well done.
I might check that out. Yeah.
So I felt like that's the level of detail we're working with here. I also want to say the star of this game is one, of course. Troy Baker does a great job of a Harrison Ford impression.
Yeah.
He
sounds a lot like him. Like, I was like, it's very uncanny.
And honestly, at certain points, I forget that it's Troy Baker.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. But honestly, I think the real star, and I think I could say this because, like, based on how far you've made it to the game from you told me, Emmerich Voss is a fucking phenomenal villain.
He's such a character. He's such a character of a villain. I do kind of love him.
I know you haven't played through enough, but so you did get the scene where it's him, like, where him and Gina are kind of spying on Emmerich Voss with the other Nazi dude, and they're kind of getting with each other.
Yes.
That is so fucking good. It's so great. It's the perfect amount of adventure and fun, but also just a little bit of schlocky goofiness to everything.
Bro.
Like, I really love that.
Bro, the part where I will say that whole scene, I was, especially at the end, because it's a series that is the most cartoony it's been. It's because it's a series of people knocking each other out at one point, even you, because they fall through the ceiling, they knock out the Nazi, and then Indy, you as Indy go and you investigate anything, and then he gives you the lore and exposition. Great acting. And then the big dude comes up, and then he knocks out Gina, and then you fight a little, and then you knock him out, but then the scientist comes back, and then he hits you, but he doesn't get knocked out, and then Gina comes back, and she hits Faust. And then the German guy comes back up and he knocks out Indy. And it's just like a series of what the fuck. And then at one point, Gina stands back up, knocks herself out over a window.
Yeah.
And then the hair falls right in the Faust. And then the German's like, "You saved my life. Thank you. I love you. You're my best friend now." And then Indy comes back and knocks them both out of the fucking chair.
It's amazing.
And then at that point, I'm just like, someone pick up a gun and shoot someone else, please. I remember immediately when that cutscene was over, I tried turning around and walking back. I was like, I'm putting 2 with my revolver into these guys. Let me back in the room. Let me in the game right now, because that was peak.
God, it's so good.
Dying laughing.
But, God, I love that whole sequence. The mocap very much paid off, especially there.
Yeah.
I also like I said, I really like Voss's character. I think you'll get much more of him later in the game, but even when you get he's a very interesting mix of he does feel like he can be an interesting, intimidating Nazi villain, but at the same time he knows when to be just really stupid and goofy and schlocky. Like whenever he what is it? He starts barking at the Nazi dude when he gets mad at him or something like that. It's so funny. And apparently, what they did is the voice actor for Voss is the German voice actor in that dub of the game. And they're like, okay, just say your lines in English, basically.
Yeah.
And he does a phenomenal job. Honestly, when I think back on it, I don't really think about Indiana Jones villains that much. But when I think about it, it's actually, yeah. Indiana Jones, at least with Raiders and Temple of Doom, has really iconic villains.
Oh, yeah.
Really, Yeah. So I'm glad to see that Great Circle is able to keep some of that tradition alive. I don't really remember the villain in the Great Crusade. I think it was the blonde chick. Right?
She was one of them. She was the first one because she betrays him. It's her, and then I'm trying to remember
The guy who like
the
memes
guy's
of where he's
name.
like,
Yeah, I don't remember his
I don't-
name, but she's the more memorable one. Also because there's the iconic line of how Indy's like, "How did you figure out she was a spy?" And his dad goes, "Oh, well, it was obvious. Plus, she talks in her sleep." And I was like, "What a fucking sick line!" I'm sorry. I love Last Crusade.
No, that's a
I love
great
Last Crusade so much. It's one of my favorites.
No, that's a good one. But yeah, like I feel like after Raiders, after Temple of Doom, like maybe the villains just for some reason just weren't as like memorable to me. And I feel like Great Circle kind of gets back to that. I feel like I think about Raiders. Admittedly, I don't think of Bellic a lot as the villain, but I do think of that one like Nazi henchman that he has the whole movie, the one that burns his hand. I always think of him.
Yeah.
Because he's so fucking good. But I also think of the, of course, Temple of Doom has that really awesome schlock. It was like Kalima. Like that. That's hard to fucking beat out as like a villain.
Yeah.
So yeah, Emmerich Bosch definitely joins that cast. It's awesome. I definitely think this is. I will say, after some initial things, I am wrong. This is definitely set after. This is definitely set after Raiders of the Lost Ark and before Great Crusade.
Okay.
Great movie. Sorry, God, did I call it a movie? Sorry, great game.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. Do definitely Drew, as you play it, I definitely recommend when you can, even though they're optional, do the field works. They're definitely well worth the time and effort to put into them because they're just so fun. They're basically their own little mini Indiana Jones films. If you do have to skip out on them, I highly suggest though the one fieldwork side quest that you need to do is Lost in the Past.
Do you know which which area Lost in the Past is?
It's going to be in basically the last big open area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You whenever you get the option and you see that fieldwork pop up, absolutely do that one because I think I love doing because like the attention to detail on the side quest is actually really well done. Like it's clear that it's much like Ghost of Tsushima. They made it like, hey, let's make sure this stuff is unique and fun and worth the player's time.
Mm-hmm.
I think you will, especially if you watch, without spoiling it, especially if you watch the other Indiana Jones films, Lost in the Past is so good. It's such a good side quest.
I love it. No, it's definitely a really fun game, and I will continue, and I will keep an eye out for that quest as I eventually finish it and then take it off my wish list. But that is my wish list game, and kind of, it gave both of us a chance to talk about Indiana Jones, but I don't know where else we would have talked about it. But what about your Seth? As you close us out here, what is your kind of big game that you haven't gotten around to play yet?
Yeah, it's very simple, and I'm pretty sure if Robert was here, he would definitely like be here to advocate more for it. But it's Metaphor ReFantazio. It's the Atlas game that I skipped out on, and I think I'll explain why a little later. But basically, there was another game come out around that same time, and I'm like, okay, this is the other game I've been really, really looking forward to for many, many years. I think, even though I know Metaphor ReFantazio is probably going to be the better game, I would much rather focus on this game I've been waiting for a long time. But now that I've beaten that other game and I really enjoyed it, Metaphor ReFantazio is just, from what I understand, it is Atlas's newest project since Persona stuff started. And from what I understand, it is Atlas with like all of the lessons that they learned with all their previous games, like Shin Megami Tensei with the Persona series. And it makes me really excited because it's like, okay, this is going to be Atlas at peak. I want to see what they could accomplish in terms of music. Apparently, also, they integrated more action game style elements into the gameplay as well, which is very interesting. I'm kind of keen to see what that is all about. But yeah, I'm just I don't really have much to say because I've been purposely like trying to avoid knowing much about the game because I do want to go in blind as possible. But yeah, Metaphor Refantasia is on my list. I've seen all the praise. I've seen how it could definitely be a Seth S game. So I am highly looking forward to it. I think it's going to be, especially with all the Game of the Year awards it did win. I have no doubt in my mind it's definitely going to be another one of those like top 10 ever games for Seth.
Yeah. I even kind of watching the trailers, watching this come out. I was like, dang, they made a game for Seth and Robert. They made another one. That's crazy. Good for you guys. I'm proud of you. I'm glad you guys got your the game. I'm gonna keep playing my monkey action game over here though.
Yeah, and I mean like that's really all I have to say on that. Like there's not like I said, there's not much else to add. So yeah, I'm really happy about it.
All right. Well, right at the 2-hour mark, I think that's a great way to leave off. I know this was kind of like a whole like talk about things we've already been playing, so I can make up a fresh pick. I don't know if you have one or if you're good to just sign out.
I do. There's always one more thing with me.
Yep.
And I kind of talked about it. There is one game I want to talk about. Just because I talked so much about it on different podcast episodes this year, and it's basically my runner-up to the Game of the Year. And I feel like I'm not really going to have another opportunity to chat about it until maybe later. But it's Dragon Age Veilguard, and I kind of want to quickly mention.
I guess that one also should also be on my wish list because I got it for Christmas, but I told myself I'm gonna finish Indiana Jones and then start that, so I didn't have too many single player things.
I also think you should do that.
Yeah.
I just want to make it clear that this is a game I talked about earlier this year. We talked about expectations for it. It was the game I was most excited for when I mentioned it last year at our last podcast like this. And the whole deal with it is, listen, by the time Veilguard released, it had been 10 years since the last Dragon Age Inquisition had came out. Mm-hmm. That's a long time. And obviously, there's been a lot of issues with BioWare and like ups and downs over the years. Admittedly, a lot of downs than ups.
Yeah.
And it feels like BioWare is trying to recalibrate and put itself back on the right track again to focus on those single-player story experiences again instead of like the live service stuff that they were kind of dipping their toes in. And Veilguard does feel like a return to form in that regard. Even though it's a little bit of a mess in terms of its story, I still think it's really good. I will say this much. Even without you knowing his full backstory, I think that you will like Solus, the main antagonist of this game. Because I personally believe he is BioWare's best written villain ever. Just ever. Yeah. All of their games. All the other Dragon Age games, all the Mass Effect games, the Star Wars games they did, the Baldur's Gate games they did, every other BioWare game they've done, this is their best villain, period. I think Solus, and it's because this is not really a spoiler because this was all in the trailer stuff. You're basically in an uneasy situation where you know Solus is trying to, as you play the game, you're putting an uneasy alliance with this guy where it's like, you know Solus is the god of lies and trickery. You know he is planning to bring about the end of the world, and he has his reasons for it. But at the same time, you're like, God, but I kind of do empathize a lot with this guy. He has a very interesting backstory and character to him. And so it is about you and your character having this relationship with Solus. And I think it's some of the best stuff that BioWare did. here's now. I think that's some really great stuff. I also think the combat is the best that Dragon Age has ever been. It took a little get used to, but I really like it, and I think you're gonna like it, especially with its like really awesome action focus.
Cool.
Here's a thing that might sound actually good for you, Drew, but a little bad for me.
Oh.
I think one of the reasons I don't like Veilguard as much as I really want to is because I played the other Dragon Age games.
No.
I think,
Perfect.
I think if I would have never played a Dragon Age game until Veilguard, it would have been one of my favorite games. Absolutely.
Okay.
But because Veilguard's in a weird space where it doesn't take into account to a lot of the choices of the past RPGs, just because it's a sort of pseudo reboot, it's a little disappointing in terms of its core. It has to leave a lot of things vague, where you're not going to know what to look for because you never played a Dragon Age game. So you're like, I don't give a shit. Like if they're being vague about something, you're like, fuck it, whatever, that's fine.
Yeah, sure.
But for
I
us
wonder what this
diehard
is
fans
about.
yeah, but us diehard fans who've been playing since like Origins and stuff like that, we're like, no, I want to know what happened to that person. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, who the fuck is this shit? So it sucks that like. I still think it's a very fun Dragon Age game. It's definitely one of the best up there. It's just a shame that like the thing holding it back is my own fandom to this game, where it's just kind of like, God, I have never experienced that before. It's like, God, if only I never played the previous games I really loved, then I would have actually enjoyed the sequel way more. I don't know. Is this how people felt when they watched like the Star Wars sequel trilogy and they never watched the other Star Wars?
You know, actually, probably, because I do know some. Because like there are people online that actually like, dang, those movies were pretty good. I see what people like Star Wars. Everyone's like, no, those movies suck. You gotta watch. You're not a real fan. I'm like, all right, guys, calm down. Calm down. They can like the movie. It's okay. Calm down.
Oh God. But like I said, I love Veilguard, and I would say all the praise and stuff I put to the story of my game of the year, Persona 3 Reload. Veilguard. It's almost frustrating how close Veilguard does get to that quality. It's not 100% there, but it gets very close. There are character moments where I do fall in love with them, and I do like laugh along with them. And there's moments where it's like it's so emotional, and it's like oh man, this character death scene just hit me so fucking hard. But there is especially some really good character death scenes. But
Veilguard or just Dragon Age?
Veilguard.
Okay.
Veilguard. Like Veilguard has some great character death scenes.
Motherfuckers getting murdered in this game. It's great.
It's not murder. It's more like, oh, that's my comfort character. They're dead now.
Wow.
And also they do a really good job of making, like, I wish maybe just a little bit more, but for the most part, it does feel like they do a good job of making your choices feel like they really matter in the story as well, which is really good. So yeah, Veilguard is great. I definitely look forward to you playing it. I'm also, as soon as I'm done doing a Dragon Age replay of the other 3 games, I'm definitely going to be revisiting Veilguard because I'm super excited to try it out again. It makes me happy. I love that game. I do wish it was a little better, but I also understand that this game was made under very strenuous circumstances, especially since this game was in development hell for about a decade. And went under like 3 different iterations, and God knows how many different people who have come and gone from BioWare in that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that's my special runner-up shout-out is to Dragon Age Veilguard. I adore that game. And while Persona 3 Reload is my game of the year, I also believe that like Veilguard is also deserving of high praise. And I truly believe it hasn't gotten the recognition it deserves despite its issues.
Now, Seth, here's like the really important question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think will happen first? That I will beat Veilguard, or that Randy will beat any of the Dragon Age games that he has purchased?
Oh, you're definitely gonna beat Veilguard. I don't think Randy's gonna like. I will say this much: Randy at least booting up and playing 10 minutes of Dragon Age Origins was still more than I was expecting from him. So he's already So I think like I'm already proud of him for that.
The
He already
craziest part is
surpassed
it's
my
not like he
expectations.
dislikes the game. He just will. Randy just only plays either Baldur's Gate, Need for Speed, or like lately, which also I'll give this as my shout out as my runner for Game of the Year, Marvel Rivals. Was not
Yeah.
expecting the Marvel Overwatch clone to be this fucking fun. Like, holy shit! I am like this is giving me flashbacks to like what 2016 Overwatch was like.
Yeah.
It's been super
Yeah, I
fun,
wasn't.
and
I
I
remember
really like
seeing
that.
the,
And Randy's been playing it a lot too. And I could
Because,
never
like-
get him to Overwatch.
Yeah, and I like at the start of 2024, I remember them revealing Marvel Rivals, and it seemed interesting, but it didn't seem like, I don't know, it didn't seem too crazy, and I don't know, maybe a lot of people when we first saw it, we were just kind of like, we're kind of hero shootered out, you know?
Yeah.
Like, Overwatch is kind of on the downslide, and really, I think a lot of people are just like a little exhausted with hero shooters. So we were kind of like, oh, okay, this looks fine. But then it came out and people actually got their hands on it and really enjoyed it. So I'm glad for that.
Yeah, I think,
I think
maybe at the time when it was revealed we were a bit, but like now I think the fact that we're ready for the next one, and this came out at the right time. We're like, especially with like Overwatch. You want to talk about like I almost need to like make a video on just like the downfall from like my favorite online game to how much I get pissed off by that game. Just every decision they made just kept bringing the game down to where it is now. And Marvel Rivals to me just finally came and put the final nail in the coffin. Especially with like how many heroes came out, how they're all, a couple, feel like, well, I'll say that abilities feel like Overwatch, but they're not on the same character. Like, for example, like, yes, there's a Roadhog hook, but it's on a DPS character. It's Bucky, and he has to charge it. Like, yes, there's a flying character, but Iron Man doesn't have to, like, constantly do, like, the jet boost thing that Pharah has to do. And there's more than one flying character. There's also a lot of melee characters. So, kind of like a lot of Genji's abilities spread out to different people. And what's even cooler about it is how already like the game's only been out for a little bit, and they've already like, hey, new season, Fantastic Four coming. Here's 2 new heroes, and don't worry, 2 more coming at the end of the month. Don't worry about that. Next month we'll have some people for you. So they're just, the team has just been really good about being very responsive, being like up in the community, and just like being like, we are here. We are not just gonna be. Because so many people saw this game and was like, this will die in a month, like a lot of shooters do. But devs have been like putting in work to make sure that like we keep this game active, we keep this fun. Again, I don't know what the future is. Maybe it will die off in 2 months. But right now, I'm having fun with it. The new heroes are fun. I'm super excited to play The Thing and Johnny Storm because we have not had Fantastic Four content in a minute. So
I feel like
that's my runner-up.
I feel like with like Marvel Rivals, I feel like the thing that kind of has it working really well, and I think part of that downfall of Overwatch 2, and you can feel free to disagree with it, but it did feel like that some part of like Blizzard's changes of how they approach like Overwatch is it felt like it was catering too much towards the hardcore competitive type players to the esports type style of play. It felt like it catered too much to that and kind of like forgot about us more casual fans, At least that's kind of how I felt. Like I felt like once they took out 6v6 and had 5v5, I was like, I don't really like this.
I didn't like it either, especially since the way they did it was take off the tank play, which gave so much pressure to if you wanted to play tank. It made Overwatch 2 made playing tank so unfun. And I will say the reason they did that wasn't just for the competitiveness of it. It was so the queue times would be lower. But it makes the tank role ungodly not fun in Overwatch 2. But
Yeah.
what's really fun, and there is validity to your point, because the one balance change that they've already shown, like, hey, the top picked players were Hela and Hawkeye, because Hawkeye was the only character that could one shot you. We've lowered his range. It made it harder for him to do, so he can still do it. So he's not unfun to play, but he has to be very close to you. Like, he can't do it from the other side of the map, because he can't. The way his bow works, it only charges up in damage if your cursor's on people and you have to like stay on them. Now the way Hawkeye works, you have to be closer physically to them, so he has to play at mid range. So you're not getting headshot from the other side of the map. You can see him. And so if a Hawkeye's beating you, he's just good. They also lowered Hela's damage because she was the other big one. Those are the only two nerfs. Everything else got buff. Wolverine got better. Storm was one of the worst characters of this game, and everyone was like, she's unfun to play. They're like, got it, more damage. And now she has the best ultimate in the game. They buffed Venom out, and just everyone. I love the design philosophy of, yes, they nerf people, but I love a design philosophy where let's buff the lower tiers more than nerf the higher tiers. Because to me, that's like, this character is not fun to play, and I don't want to be Wolverine because he's hard to do. All right, well, we'll give Wolverine more health so he can be tankier, which is one of the changes. So that to me screams, let's play for fun. Let's make everyone overpowered and give everyone something overpowered to do, because that's fun to do. And the other,
I feel like
the other last thing I'll say.
just remember the.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just saying that, like, it feels like, and you're free to disagree, and it seems like that you had some disagreements with it, but I feel like and it's not I have an issue with esports or competitive play, but it feels like sometimes we get forgotten about, and I feel like when you lose sight of the fun in the game, of like how to make it like a fun experience, it leads to those issues where I feel like people want to leave, and they're like, I don't want to play this game anymore because it's no longer for me. It's for these players. I don't want to be.
I don't disagree with you at all. That's what I was saying. Like, they're making sure the quote unquote weaker characters still have something. But no, I definitely think this game is leaning more towards like they have their esports and competitive stuff, but like, this game leads towards fun. I mean, the most fun part about this game is the team up things. You're able to pick up your teammate. If you're playing Hulk and they're playing Wolverine, pick them up and fastball special throw them. There is no gameplay there. It's not even that good. It's kind of bad, but it's really funny. And like, there's so many interactions like that. I'm just like, this is just fun. Magneto's ult can just like absorb projectiles and throw it back. Like, that's fun.
Right.
I love the team up things of just like, yeah, you get a new move. Your dude is like, if you're a comic accurate duo. And so I think that's why I really have fun with it, and like the team compositions, and like, it does feel like, yeah, it sets up for silly plays. Heck, they put Jeff the Land Shark in this game. Nobody knew who that was, but he's this adorable little shark. And his most useful way to use his ult is to eat people and then jump off the map with them to like suicide bomb the enemy team. And I know exactly that this game is meant for fun, because you can do it to your own teammates. When Jeff ults, he hits anyone that's in that circle. Now, you can spit out your allies if you're a good person, and you should spit out your allies before jumping off the map, but some people forget they can do that.
That's funny.
Yeah, it's great.
So I do want to go back to the fastball special. Can you throw your teammates off a cliff?
Oh yeah. Now, it is just Hulk and Wolverine. It's just Hulk.
Yeah,
but you can like, it's a button.
You can't kill your Wolverine.
Yeah, no, you can easily kill him, because like, there's been so many clips of so like, you have to push both buttons, and the Wolverine and the Hulk runs out, immediately turns to his left, sees a clip, and tosses him. What's even more fun than that, Seth, is I've seen clips on TikTok where the Hulk's holding Wolverine, and they see an Iron Man ult and just throw the Wolverine at the Iron Man ult. So he takes it
and dies, but hey, the ult didn't hit the rest of the team. It then like forces you to sacrifice your dude, and it's. Now I will say you can't just pick him up. You do like both players have to push the button. So like the Wolverine is putting his faith in you that you won't do that to him. But it's fun.
That's actually great.
Yeah, and more than likely, probably if they ever add like. I do wonder if they'll let him do the thing, but I imagine because the original fastball special is with Colossus, so more than likely they will add Colossus in the game, so you can probably do it with more than just the Hulk. But it's fun. I really like that game, and yeah, highly recommend to peel back there, but also to you, Seth, because this is. I mean, and that's the other thing. It's a completely free game. There is not many reasons to not pick it up and just go into quick play and have some fun with it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to compete with that.
Yeah. So, highly recommend Marvel Rivals. We'll probably continue playing it for a while. But I think that's about everything. I think that's everything we have to talk about.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Seth, I want to thank you for joining me this evening and talking about some video games.
Yeah, no problem. Looking forward to what this year's going to bring.
Yes, and we'll see you next time. Watch the rest of the podcast. Watch some shorts. Whatever app takes up next is where I'll put all the TikTok shorts. I don't know if it's Red Note or I just keep doing YouTube shorts. Maybe I move everything to Instagram Reels. We'll see. Who knows? The future's bright for everyone except TikTok. But thank you all for listening or watching, and stay safe out there.